Good afternoon, everyone. Jeff Baker, Arapahoe County Commissioner and Chair of DRCOG. I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Board of Directors of DRCOG at Wednesday, January 7th at 4 o'clock. I will call the meeting to order and I will ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, I have some notes here. We have some new folks joining us today. We've already said hello to one of them, but we'll go through the list here. New members, we have Rachel Hulteen from City of Wheat Ridge. She was formerly an alternate. Rachel, if you're here.
Hello. Right. It's good to see everyone.
Good to see you. Also, Sally Daigle from the City of Sheridan, former board member, and she's now the mayor of the City of Sheridan. Welcome, Sally.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Christine Sweetland is from the City of Centennial. She's now the mayor. She was formerly the alternate. Welcome, Christine. Is Christine there?
I don't think I've seen her yet, Chair.
Okay. And from the City of Littleton, we have Robert Reichhardt. Robert, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We have some new alternates as well. From City of Wheat Ridge, formerly the primary member, Dan Larson is a new alternate. From the City of Arvada, we have Shauna Ambrose. Shauna? Not sure if all the alternates are attending today. From the City and County of Broomfield, Kenny Van Wien. And from the town of Erie, Brandon Bell. I want to say welcome to all the new alternates and members. I have one more announcement. Agenda item number 8 on our agenda for tonight, the Urban Land Institute. Local government technical assistance programs will be postponed due to illness of the presenter, something that I think we're seeing a lot of from folks right now with the flu that's going around. All right, next up on our agenda, let me change screens here. I'm sorry, I got lost in my little things. We are going to have roll call. Melinda, would you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And for those of you, if you're not able to respond when your name is called, I will ask at the end, and you can raise your hand and we'll just make sure that you're recorded as in attendance for the meeting. All right, here we go. Julie Dran-Mullica, Adams County. Kathy Henson, Adams County. Oops, apologies. Jeff Baker, Arapahoe County.
Here.
Claire Levy, Boulder County.
Present.
Austin Ward, City and County of Broomfield. I believe I saw him on. Just in case, Kenny Van Wyn, City and County of Broomfield. Rebecca Lloyd, Clear Creek County. Jody Hartman Ball, Clear Creek County. Adam Paul, Denver. Nicholas Williams, Denver. Kevin Flynn, Denver.
Here.
Thank you. Kevin Van Winkle, Douglas County. Abe Layden, Douglas County. Susan Berriman, Gilpin County.
Here.
Thank you. Andy Kerr, Jefferson County.
Here.
Thank you. Sharon Davis, Arvada.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Allison Coombs, Aurora. Larry Vittum, Bennett. Royce Pindell, Bennett. Nicole Spear, Boulder.
Present.
Greg Mills, Brighton.
Here.
Deborah Mulvey, Castle Pines. Roger Hudson, Castle Pines. Jason Gray, Castle Rock. Tim Dietz, Castle Rock. Christine Sweetland, Centennial.
Here.
Zane Plasek, Central City. Robert Eber, Cherry Hills Village. Susan McGuire, Cherry Hills Village. Steve Douglas, Commerce City. Michelle Rogers, Dacono. Adam Moorhead, Dacono. Steve Conklin, Edgewater.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Othaniel Sierra, Inglewood. Emily Bayer, Erie.
Here.
Linda Montoya, Federal Heights. Ray Bird, Firestone.
Here.
Josie Cockrell, Foxfield. Lisa Jones, Foxfield. Wendy Padilla, Frederick. Georgia Kofed, Georgetown.
Here.
Rachel Binkley, Glendale. Ryan Toucher, Glendale. Lisa Vitry, Golden. Paul Hazeman, Golden. George Lance, Greenwood Village. Chuck Harmon, Idaho Springs.
Here.
Thank you. David, excuse me, David Friedland, Lafayette. Jeslyn Sherzai, Lakewood.
Present.
Robert Reichard, Littleton.
Here.
Kat Bristow, Lockbuoy. Larry Strock, Lockbuoy.
Present.
Marissa Harmon, Lone Tree.
Here, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Judy Kern, Louisville.
Here. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year. Holly Rogan, Lions.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. Colleen Whitlow, Mead.
Here.
Angela Bernhardt, Morrison. Adam Way, Morrison. Kathleen Bailey, Mountain View.
Here.
Nicole Sterling, Netherland.
Here.
Richard Kondo, North Glen. Shannon Lukman, Hiromasa, North Glen. John Dyack, Parker.
Here.
Sally Daigle, Sheridan. I know we just heard from her.
here.
Here we go. Welcome back, Sally. Lee Bernardo, Silver Plume. Neil Shaw, Superior. Mike Foster, Superior. Justin Martinez, Thornton.
Here.
Sarah Nermella, Westminster.
Here.
Rachel Hulteen, Wheat Ridge.
Present.
Darius Pakbaz, CDOT.
Here.
Sally Chafee, CDOT. Bill Soroy, RTD.
Here.
All right. And then for those of you who weren't able to respond, if you could just raise your virtual hand and I can read off that you are here and in attendance for the meeting. Okay, I think we got all of the board members, Mr. Chair, so I will hand it back to you with a quorum.
Excellent.
Oh,
Thank
Richard
There-
Kondo, sorry. And Chuck Harmon.
you. And Tim Dietz of Castle Rock also put in the chat that he's here.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that.
No problem. All right. We are with the one change that I mentioned, item number 8, being postponed. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Excellent. And who was the motion? Sorry.
Emily Bear.
Okay.
Second.
Emily,
Second was Judy Kern.
second with Judy. Excellent. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Our agenda has been approved. Thank you all very much for all that. We are going to move on to public comment. This is item number 5 on our agenda. Up to 45 minutes is allocated now for public comment, and each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. If there are additional requests from the public to address the board, time will be allocated at the end of the meeting to complete public comment. I'm going to request that there be no public comment on issues for which a prior public hearing has been held before this board. Our consent and action items will begin immediately after the last speaker. Do we have anybody that signed up in advance or is wanting to speak now? Ms. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see Chandler Sanchez of SWEEP. We'll go ahead and allow you to speak at this time.
Welcome. You have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you to the chair and to the board today. Good afternoon, and I'd really like to thank you for the opportunity to give public comment and also to the DRCOG staff here for their work on the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. My name is Chandler Sanchez, and I was raised in Adams County, and I currently live in Denver, and I am here today with the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project to give comment on DRCOG's Regional Transportation Project Candidate List, which will be introduced later tonight. I am urging the board to better align near-term investments with both community priorities and the region's stated goals for safety, climate, and mobility. Community members have been very clear about what they want. DRCOG's own engagement study found that nearly 75% of respondents believe that new general-purpose lanes should be a low to no priority funding, while the majority support expanding transit, sidewalks, and bike infrastructure. Similarly, DRCOG has set meaningful targets in regards to reducing VMT, improving transportation safety, as well as reducing transportation-related pollution in the region, and I appreciate that the candidate list before us today and the scoring really does seem to reflect that. Despite this scoring, the current project list front loads expensive road expansions and interchange projects to the near term, while multimodal projects are being pushed into later decades. Projects like the Havana-Hampton BRT, Pecos Corridor improvements, and the Broadway-Lincoln BRT, as well as Alameda Avenue multimodal corridor improvements, are within the top highest scoring projects throughout the entire region. Yet right now, they're only slated to be effectively have no guaranteed funding over the next decade. These great multimodal projects are also heavily concentrated in Boulder, Denver, and Douglas County, which leaves fast-growing communities like Adams, Arapahoe, and Weld counties locked into car dependency, and it prevents these communities from maintaining the safety, pollution, and transportation option benefits unlocked in these projects in other counties. The sooner that we invest in multimodal infrastructure, the sooner that we realize those savings and deliver those benefits. So I'm urging the board members to move forward a candidate list that is in line with their stated goals of the region and that helps deliver the benefits and transportation investments that your communities are asking for. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else who has asked to speak? Ms. Stevens?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I do not see any other hands raised, nor was I contacted prior to the meeting.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. We will go ahead and close public comment at this time. Next up on our agenda is item number 6. This is our consent agenda. It consists of three summary of the November 5th meeting, a policy statement on state legislative issues, and amendments to the 2026-2029 Transportation Improvement Program. Is there any director that would like to remove any of those and move them onto action items? Not seeing any. Do you see any, Melinda?
Sorry about that. I do not.
Okay. Then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and vote on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, Mayor Mills?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to move forward the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you very much. And was there a second?
Yes, from myself, Chuck Harmon.
Oh, excellent. Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Director. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And are there any opposed? Seeing none, our consent agenda has been approved. Thank you all very much for that. Next item on our agenda is the only action item that we have. Discussion of appointments to the Front Range Passenger Rail District Board. This is attachment D in your packet, and we're going to hear from Jacob Rieger, Director of Transportation Planning and Operations. Good afternoon, Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy New Year, everyone. So this is an item relating to our board, our representatives from the DRCOG board who represent us on the Front Range Passenger Rail District Board. We have 4 representatives under Senate Bill 238 who represent DRCOG. They serve 4-year terms, and this is where it gets a little confusing. Of these 4 folks who serve 4-year terms, their terms are offset by 2 years. What that means is that every 2 years, we appoint 2 of the 4 members. 2 years later, we appoint the other 2. So if I haven't lost you already, we are at that time where we have 2 of our board members who we need to appoint to the Front Range Passenger Rail District Board. So over the fall and kind of early winter timeframe, we solicited applications for these 2 seats. We appreciate everyone who applied. We worked with the nominating committee to kind of sort through and vet those applications and make a recommendation to you all as the DRCOG board. I won't speak for the nominating committee. I will invite them to speak if desired. But their recommendation to you is to reappoint the 2 incumbents who are currently representing us on the Front Range Rail Board whose terms are expiring. That would be Chris Nevitt from the City and County of Denver, who is actually chair of the Front Range Passenger Rail District Board, and Deborah Mulvey from the City of Castle Pines, who actually chairs the Front Range Passenger Rail District Board's Governance and Communications Committee. So those are the recommendations from our nominating committee to reappoint those 2 members to represent us. One other note for you in particular, Mr. Chair, these folks represent our MPO area, which is a little bit smaller than our DRCOG area. So when you all as a board take this vote, we do need to exclude representatives from Clear Creek and Gilpin counties and from areas in Adams and Arapahoe east of Kiowa Creek, meaning folks who, those of you who represent our MPO area are the ones who vote on these board members for Front Range Passenger Rail. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, I see one hand raised. Director Davis.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to let you know that the nominating committee decided on these 2 nominees to have consistency of DRCOG's representation on the board. So we want to thank everyone who put their name in the hat. We really do appreciate all of the experience that you have and that you have provided to DRCOG over these many years. And so this is just in support of consistency for the Front Range Passenger Board. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Davis. We appreciate that little look into the background, and I appreciate that. Director Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I only have one question because having served on the nominating committee, I know that those discussions are to remain private. But could we have the names of the other 4 candidates? Because I think there were 6, if I remember reading an email correctly, who had applied, just out of sheer curiosity.
Yes, I can share who actually applied for those seats when we did our application process. So obviously Chris Nevitt and Deborah Mulvey, again, the 2 folks who currently serve and who are being recommended by the nominating committee. Rachel Zenzinger, County Commissioner in Jefferson County. Robert Reichert. Robert, hopefully I've said your name correctly, our new board member from the City of Littleton. Nicholas Williams from the City and County of Denver. And then Commissioner Levy from Boulder County, who is on our board, of course, and is a current governor's appointee. So she also serves on the Front Range Passenger Rail District Board. She does not represent DRCOG directly. She represents a governor's appointed seat, but she also applied through this process.
All right. Thank you.
Director Levy.
Yeah, thank you. And I did want to just share that I applied sort of as a backup in case the governor wasn't going to reappoint me using one of his appointments. I've been assured that that will happen. And when I learned that that was the case, I communicated with I think Jacob and our director Doug Rex that I did not want to in any way compete with Director Mulvey or Director Nevitt because they're doing a very fine job.
Thank you, Director Levy. And if that does not happen, you have 59 jurisdiction representatives here who will be happy to all write letters of protest if the governor fails to appoint you. All right. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or concerns about this process? Or if not, then Chair would entertain a motion to approve the nominations. Do I take other nominations from the floor? I don't know if that's what we normally, I don't think so.
We don't normally do that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make
because
sure
we had the candidate application process. That was the time to
I'm
apply.
having flashbacks to CCI and other boards that I sit on, so I apologize for that. Director Kondo.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to motion that the slate of two nominees, Chris Nevitt and Deborah Mulvey, be finalized as our representatives to the Front Range Passenger Rail District Board.
This is Judy Kern, and I'd like to second.
Thank you, Judy. We appreciate that. So there's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I can't find my.
I don't see any. I did see.
This is Deborah Mulvey. I cannot find my hand. No jokes about that, please, Your Honor. But I wish to recuse and abstain.
Oh, definitely understand that. We have a new representative from Commerce City. Sorry, I'm just reading a chat that just came in. Charles Duke from Commerce City. So I wanted to make an announcement that he is joining us as well. All right, there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, we want to say congratulations to Director Mulvey and Director Nesbitt. All right, we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda. This is the start of our informational briefings. Again, item 8 has been postponed. We'll move on to number 9, the Regional Housing Strategy Update. Attachment F in your packet. Sheila Lynch, Director of Regional Planning and Development. Sheila?
Right, and thank you so much, Chair Baker. Really happy to be here this evening. As many of you know, we have been in the midst of developing a regional housing strategy over the last year, and we're excited to bring you an update this evening. We are very fortunate to have some speakers other than me to share all this great news. Reagan Frew, our senior planner in our regional planning team, will be kicking it off. And then we also have 2 of our consultants here that will also be sharing information, Tyler Bump and Leanne Ryan. So I will pass it on to Reagan.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reagan Frew. I'm a senior planner with DRCOG's Regional Planning and Development team. We are glad to be here this evening to provide a project update on the development of a regional housing strategy. And I can share that PowerPoint. Looks like maybe it was being shared and then went away. So I'm happy to share that if that's easiest.
Let me see. Did it go away? Let's see. Oh, are you seeing it again?
Perfect. Yes.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Leanne. Okay, so next slide, please. So to start, I would first like to ground the regional housing strategy in MetroVision, the Denver region's long-range plan for growth and development that reflects a shared vision for all 59 member governments. MetroVision was unanimously adopted by the DRCOG board, and one of the plan's key outcomes is that there are diverse housing options meeting the needs of residents of all ages, incomes, and abilities. To get there, MetroVision establishes 3 housing objectives, being diversifying the region's housing stock, increasing the regional supply of housing attainable for a variety of households, and increasing opportunities for diverse housing accessible by multimodal transportation. So given this foundation, the DRCOG board initiated the process for a regional housing strategy. And these goals of MetroVision have guided our regional approach to housing and are informing our housing work that is underway. So our approach also emphasizes bringing resources and technical assistance to member governments to address the region's housing needs. So this does not replace local efforts, but rather is intended to enhance those efforts and provide regionally scaled solutions. Ultimately, the regional housing strategy is the action arm for housing within MetroVision, turning the region's shared vision when it comes to housing into a coordinated and implementable plan. And when the board initiated this process for the strategy, there were many discussions about how to start this work, and the board made the strategic decision to start with a regional housing needs assessment. So this assessment establishes the scale and scope of the region's housing needs so we can develop strategies that match the reality on the ground, and includes comprehensive data analysis as well as stakeholder-driven identification of barriers to addressing housing need. And at this point, we will go to the next slide and I will pass it off to our consultant to discuss this more.
I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank you for focusing on the important work that our federal officers do and make sure that we're.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I think, is Tyler on yet? Sheila, do you see him?
Just going through the list. Let's see. I don't see him yet. So if you want to take it away, that's great.
Yes. So just as a reminder, because I think we might have some new board members since the regional housing needs assessment. These were our 5 action areas since the regional housing needs assessment was completed, and they're a framework that is carrying forward into our regional housing strategy. So we're just going to remind everyone of those 5 areas as we get into this presentation. And those are the land use, zoning, and regulatory processes, infrastructure, development costs and market factors, funding and capacity, community consensus, and collective action. And so keep those in the back of your mind as we get into the strategy framework later on. And so just as a quick, Sheila, let me know if he hops on. And here's our agenda for the rest of the presentation. We'll do a quick welcome and overview, which I think we've already well covered. And then we'll do a process update and what we've accomplished during the regional housing strategy process. And then we'll get into kind of the strategy development and some regional housing strategy examples, just to kind of ground you in the different regional peers that we've been looking into and kind of how they've structured their strategies. And then we'll give you a preview of what's ahead in the strategy process. And maybe some of you have also seen this graphic before. So we've taken a phased approach to the regional housing strategy. The first phase is discovery. So we've shared out some findings, I think, in some previous presentations on the environmental scan, which took a look across the region at some of the good work that's been happening across local jurisdictions, and even at some of the regional examples that have been happening across the region of collaboration. We developed an engagement plan that we've been carrying out over the last almost year, actually. Yeah, I guess a year around this time last year. And then the regional context analysis, which looked at an activity centers analysis and a displacement risk assessment. And then phase two is where we are today. We're kind of at the tail end of it, is really the meat of the strategy development. So we created some goals and objectives, best practice research, and then the strategy development. And then phase three is where we're putting it all together. And so I will turn it over to Tyler now.
Thanks, Leanne, and hello, everybody. So I'll start by talking a little bit about what we've accomplished. So Leanne, if you'd go to the next slide, please. A little bit of our engagement approach so far. We've got sort of three main prongs of our engagement and how we've been reaching folks. We've got our sort of guiding project leadership. You all as the DRCOG board providing regional strategic leadership and vision for the strategy's direction. We have a steering committee as well, and I do want to acknowledge some of the elected officials that are serving on our state steering committee or our advisory groups that are members of the board. We have Commissioner Levy, Commissioner Duran-Milica, Commissioner Fields, and Councilmember Kern, who are also contributing and bringing that alignment from the board perspective and the elected official perspective into our work as through the steering committee and the advisory group. And then on our advisory group, we've got some expert guidance of stakeholders throughout the region. Some of those folks are local staff. Some of them are housing practitioners. We've got folks that are community advocates and nonprofits that are providing that perspective. We've been engaging with a broad spectrum of partners throughout the region, elected officials, local government staff, city and county managers. We've been doing some trainings and some workshops with city and county managers throughout the region. Industry and technical experts, affordable housing developers, service providers, and community and public organizations. And then we also have broad engagement strategy, interactive sessions around focus groups, workshops, targeted one-on-one conversations and interviews for really sort of important nuts that we need to crack as part of our work and get more deep dive information on some of this. And then broad outreach, some listening sessions, workshops with partners, and a communication strategy to help provide overall productive housing conversations across the region. Next slide. And so I also want to acknowledge that this work is building from a strong foundation, and we've been working with our partners on this project, Root Policy Research, who have conducted an environmental scan and talked to jurisdictions across the region and reviewed what folks are doing. This strategy builds on really strong local momentum that's been identified through the environmental scan. We've got a growing adoption of zoning updates that reflect housing diversity goals throughout the region. Majority of jurisdictions offer affordability incentives. Cities are investing in a variety of preservation programs. A use of a variety of public finance tools to fund housing investments and doing those in a creative way and taking advantage of new funding opportunities as they come up. And a lot of local governments and jurisdictions have more dedicated housing staff and have their own local housing strategies that are guiding some of their action. Next slide, please. There's also really important and interesting regional innovations and opportunities that have come up in some of our conversations that we've had with folks. We're hearing about the work that Boulder County has continued to do, and specifically with the metro manufacturers and expanding modular housing to reduce costs. Wheat Ridge and Boulder piloting policies to advance preservation efforts. Boulder County, Jeffco, and the Tri-Cities offering replicable cross-jurisdictional collaboration efforts. So how are cities and sometimes counties working together and across jurisdictional boundaries to achieve housing objectives. And local philanthropic organizations are stepping up and backing both housing projects and public engagement, and really thinking about this middle income component, because there's a lot of resources in the 0 to 60% AMI, whether that's from federal funding or other funding sources. But a lot of those philanthropic organizations are thinking about that moderate income that doesn't have that ongoing funding resource there. And I do want to pause for a second too, because Commissioner Levy, I don't know if you are here, but one of the things that I think in our work has been really interesting is hearing about these cross-county collaborations, and Boulder County being sort of on the front of that for a long time and sort of implementing that and how that's changed over time. I don't know, Commissioner Levy, if you want to sort of add anything about perspectives in Boulder County.
Sure. Yeah, Tyler, thanks. I am here. Yeah, I thought it might be helpful just for, there are some other jurisdictions that are mentioned in the slide here that are also doing these things. But what we've been able to do in Boulder County in this is create this regional housing partnership that came together back in 2019, where our Director of Housing and Human Services worked really hard to get every single community in Boulder County to agree and sign on to a partnership that set a goal for the percentage of housing in Boulder County that was going to be permanently deed restricted affordable. That goal was set at 12%. It set up some methods that we were going to all agree to try to achieve that goal. And it just created an atmosphere of collaboration among all of us that was really essential when we did go to the voters in 2023 to get approval for this affordable and attainable housing tax that we now have. And I think having worked together and come up with this mutual goal was really essential to being able to get a local source of funding, because we had tried in Boulder before unsuccessfully. And so I just thought it might be helpful just to share that approach. It took a while to get that buy-in from everybody. I think people were skeptical about why create a target when we don't have the funding, but it's hard to get the funding if you don't have a target. And so what we've been able to do now with this partnership is, because we have our AAHT that is generating about $15-16 million a year, is we're using this to select the projects that we're going to be funding across all of the jurisdictions within Boulder County. We're coming up with a shared communications campaign for the value of affordable housing. We're working to implement fast track review of projects in compliance with Prop 123. So we're just leveraging all the relationships that we spent so much time building in Boulder County to get to the point where we could have this partnership.
Thanks, Commissioner Levy. We have heard so much from jurisdictions around looking at Boulder as they're thinking about these cross-jurisdictional and county collaborations. So it's been great to hear about how Boulder County's grown and sort of shifted their priorities and made progress over the years too. Next slide, please, Leanne. We're going to talk next about where we are now in the process and where we're moving, and sort of give you an update about what we've been working on since the last time we talked with you all. One of the things that we're working on right now, we're really moving towards the structure of the regional housing strategy and getting into more of the really solid foundational components of what that looks like. So we've done the research and engagement. We've gathered insights from important community stakeholders and implementers across the region. We've had a lot of conversations with stakeholders and our sort of guiding groups with the steering committee and the advisory group on our organizing principles. And we are really solidly in this draft structure stage right now. Over the next few months, we're going to be finalizing the draft structure and then moving into this implementation readiness and thinking about how do we make impact across the Denver region with the regional housing strategy. Next slide, please. And so here's a graphic overview of the components or the draft components of the regional housing strategy. First off, we've got the purpose. So why regional collaboration? It explains why the regional housing strategy is important and why collaboration is essential to meeting the region's housing needs. Next, we've got the vision. What will the regional housing strategy accomplish? What are we working towards? We've got some goals. What outcomes do we want to achieve? And then we've got this element called pathways. What do we do? How do we start to think about getting there? And then really getting into more of the detail of the implementation is the strategies. How do we do it? What are the structures, the processes, the actions in order for us to get there? And then related to some of these too is what are the partnerships and implementation measures look like? How do, as a region, different partners throughout the region work together to achieve the goals, the vision, and implement those strategies? Next slide, please. So really quickly to go through some of these draft goals with you, we just kind of want to share at a high level where these are at. We've had lots of conversations around these draft goals. They'll continue to be refined. We're going back to have some more conversations with the advisory group in the next 6 weeks or so for the next meeting with them. But the first draft goal that we're working with is to meet the region's housing needs across all income levels by expanding supply and increasing housing diversity. The second is to preserve and stabilize affordable housing across the region so that investments can protect residents, maintain community culture, and prevent displacement. Strengthen regional coordination to advance housing affordability as a regional economic priority. expand and align funding capacity across jurisdictions to support housing and infrastructure development, and to build public understanding and political will to reframe housing as a regional asset and create momentum for action across the Denver region. Next slide, please. So what are the implementation strategies? And this gets a little bit more into the details about moving into the how do we make this happen? Right now, we're thinking about these strategies of turning the housing strategy from vision into action. Again, these are actionable tools, policies, and programs. Funding that's needed. How do we think about funding from different sources? And how do we leverage relationships, funding, programs, and partnerships across the region to make that happen? We have to clarify how pathways are implemented and who is involved and what their role is. So there's different folks doing different things throughout the region. As we talked about earlier, there's folks across the region, organizations across the region doing really great work. How do we elevate that and uplift that? And how do we spread those best practices across other parts of the region? Identify what's most viable, scalable, and aligned with regional priorities. Where can we scale? Where are the efforts needed in the near term? And where can we have the most impact? And ultimately, really building a shared ownership of the regional housing strategy from actors and implementers across the region and partners to support implementation. Next slide, please. And so we've got we're just sort of working with early concepts around what some of these draft implementation strategies could look like. So we've got an example here of a pathway. And so one of the things that we're hearing about is funding. So how do we think about developing the potential for a shared regional housing and infrastructure fund? Again, these are draft, and they will continue to be refined and workshopped in coordination with the stakeholders. So some implementation strategies or really ideas that have come up as part of our work with stakeholders and engagement so far is thinking about exploring a potential new regional affordable housing fund. How do we support existing partnerships across the region? How do we create, as Commissioner Levy just talked about, new county or cross-county or cross-jurisdictional partnerships to pool and leverage funds in a way that achieve the objectives across the region? How can jurisdictions, communities, and counties be working together to achieve cross-jurisdictional housing goals? Because housing is a regional issue and doesn't stop at jurisdictional boundaries. Next slide, please. We're also looking at examples from other regions. So this example is a quick screenshot from the Puget Sound Regional Council on their implementation strategies and how they think about things. They've got 3 core housing goals with their regional housing strategy with associated actions. They also, similar to DRCOG and what we're hearing from the advisory group, very, very clearly has recognized the need for collective regional coordination to implement the strategy. They also don't have regulatory power to implement it, but seek to incentivize coordination and on housing actions through funding programs and other approaches and services from the regional government through jurisdictions and partners in the region. And in PSRC, there's also this interesting cross-county sort of sub-regional coordination thing that's happening on housing strategies, where regional housing agencies at different scales can step in where local capacity is limited. And there's some interesting things happening in the Puget Sound in similar but different ways that are happening across the Denver region as well. Next slide, please. We're also looking at DRCOG, South Bend, Indiana. They have a partnership. Their regional housing strategy is a partnership between the Council of Governments, the South Bend Elkhart Regional Partnership, which is the regional economic development organization, and community foundations. So the community foundations are really sort of critical partners in the stewardship of the regional housing strategy here in South Bend, Indiana, which is really interesting. This strategy is a toolkit for cities, counties, and other stakeholders to promote production across a range of income levels. It establishes a regional housing collaborative, which is a program that's a land bank and an investment fund that go together. That's a pooled fund from these partners that are in this sort of stewardship role, the philanthropic partners, nonprofit partners, economic development organization, and the regional government. And they have an implementation plan that guides the study's project partners. So there's a clear work plan about what some of these partners are doing for implementation of the plan. Next slide, please. And this example is from Portland Metro, the Oregon Metro region. And this is a little bit different because the regional government's required to do this under state law now. But this is an example of how they're thinking about innovative approaches to non-low-income housing tax credit, affordable housing, and how to think about different actions to be able to move towards other innovative approaches to affordable housing or middle income housing or non-market regulated housing. And so this is really thinking through how to address barriers and identify opportunities for scaling up innovative approaches to housing. The interesting thing here is in Oregon Metros, they have a really clear sort of implementation year when they're implementing things. What are the critical steps to do it? It's really a clear work plan for how to implement these actions that are in a 3 to 5 year action plan with the Portland Metro Regional Government. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about what's next and where we're heading. We're heading into another phase of engagement pretty soon. In the next, as I mentioned, in the next 6 weeks or so, we're moving into our next advisory group meeting where we're really going to start stress testing some of the strategies, looping back with some of the feedback that we've heard on the goals and the pathways and those elements that we talked about before. And really start to build buy-in and readiness for implementation, getting regional partners excited and interested around where they're stepping in, both jurisdictions and nonprofit and other partners throughout the region. Moving into the spring and summer, we're really confirming alignment and the strategy, refining that strategy, and then launching and socializing the strategy. So that's when we get to the communications component. In both of these timeframes, we're going to be looping back with you all as the board. And working with you also to co-develop these and stress test these as well. What's working in your communities, making sure that these strategies reflect the direction of your communities and the region as a whole as we move through the final housing strategy into the summer of this year, which it's now 2026. So we're in this year officially of 2026. And with that, a big thank you and appreciate the time for the update today. And maybe Sheila, Doug, if we want to open it up for any reflections or questions or discussion, if that sounds right to you, or any additions from the DRCOG team.
Yeah, let's see if there are any questions for our presenters. You can raise your hand or wave at me on your screen. I haven't seen any hands being raised. Sheila, do you have any closing thoughts? Oh, wait, there's one. Nicole Spear.
Sorry, I was struggling. Thank you. I was just struggling to find my raise hand button for some reason. I feel like it changes every week or two. So I just had a question. Thank you so much for the presentation, and thanks to everybody who's been working in this area. One of the questions I have is just around, how and if we're distinguishing between what is affordable for renters versus what's affordable in terms of home ownership opportunities. Because I'm hearing a lot in Boulder, maybe it's just Boulder, about how we don't have enough middle income housing that's affordable to people at middle incomes. But that's actually not true when we think about rental housing. We actually have plenty of rental housing that's affordable to people who are making 80 to 120% of the AMI here in Boulder. What we're missing is home ownership opportunities. And so I just want to know, are we distinguishing here in the draft strategy about that? Because I think it is something that seems to need clarity in this moment as we're thinking about strategies. Thank you.
That is very good feedback for where we are in this process. And that's the exact kind of sort of feedback that we're hoping to hear from you all as we engage at this point. We don't have those details yet, and what we're working towards is creating those details and doing that so with the advisory group and the steering committee and other members here. So that is great feedback that we'll take back to the team and to the group and think about how to integrate some of that tenure stuff and where the need is. I will say that we have heard also around the need for ownership housing at moderate income levels, and one of the things that the advisory group and at the steering committee we've had conversations on is around the lack of resources on funding and the programmatic side specific for ownership at those moderate income levels too. So it has been part of the discussion, and we will be getting there as part of the strategies, and this is really great feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair, may I add a couple more comments while I have the mic rather than just questions? One is, I think that kind of inclusion will be really helpful as we're thinking about this. The other thing that I think about often is the rapid aging of our population in Colorado, especially in Boulder, and what that means in terms of the type of housing that's going to be needed for people, right? More accessible housing, for example, which we already don't have enough of, but thinking specifically about senior housing and assisted living facilities and things like that. In Boulder, one of our main locations that is also very expensive has a wait list of over 800 people. Over 800 people who are waiting to get in to this senior living facility. I mean, that's an enormous need. And so if there's a space for also just thinking about the ages, the types of housing, the opportunity, that's not a home ownership opportunity per se, but it costs people about $1 million just to get in the door. And then there's an additional monthly rent to keep paying. And still, over 800 people are waiting to get into this place. So, I mean, I think, things like this, especially in some of our communities that are aging very rapidly, would be very helpful. And the other thing that I wonder about as we're putting this regional strategy together is thinking about the bang for our buck, so to speak, right? It costs so much money to create a unit of middle income home ownership housing, right? Versus middle income rental housing, right? We can get a lot more of those for the price of a home. And so I wonder if we can just think about how to tease out some of these things as well. It may be that we want to invest a bunch of money in middle income home ownership opportunities. And if we're really crunched, is that really what we want to do? So I'm really eager to hear. I'm sure these discussions are coming out in your conversations too, but thank you for letting me have a few minutes to talk about this.
Director Kondo, did you want to respond, Tyler? Okay, Director Kondo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just kind of curious, going back to slide 7, the engagement framework. First of all, I think this is really a great presentation, and you have some nice processes here. But I think one of the things that I'm most concerned about is how the state obviously kind of rushed in and tried to fix this problem without really getting information and putting the cart in front of the horse, so to speak. So now that we are doing a data-informed process that's got structure, I'm wondering, are there elements in here where we will also brief state legislators, so that they know that there is progress being made and they don't need to kind of go off and continue to throw wrenches into the machine, so to speak.
Is that a Sheila or maybe even a Doug Rex question?
Well, I can start, and I so appreciate the comment, Director Kondo, especially because we've been at this work for several years and we have shared with the state how important it is to be intentional. I like to think they were looking at us a little bit when they designed Senate Bill 174, because they suggested starting with an assessment and then leading into action plans, which is what DRCOG was already underway. One of the things that we have tried to do in this process, because our strategy was scoped before 174, I think even was had passed, is we've stayed in conversation with staff at the state level to really try to inform what we're learning through the process, what's really going to make the most impact. And the other thing I'll just mention is that because we realize there are these requirements for action plans at the local level, we did submit our application for funding that will cover 2 elements that are required for us per Senate Bill 174 from 2024. We have to do a regional growth, strategic growth element and water element. But in addition, we asked for some funding to do what we're calling technical assistance around housing action plans, because what we'd like to do is make this great work we're doing around regional housing strategy even more helpful to local governments so that they can achieve those requirements that are required now for action planning at the local level. And so appreciate your perspective on, yes, this work really takes a lot of an intention in understanding the scale and scope of the problem, which what we came up with in our regional housing needs assessment. And also what we're learning is that the solutions, yes, certainly there's solutions in trying to address housing production and streamlining things and trying to address maybe local processes to encourage faster development processes. But there are so many more things to address in order to really have an impact on affordable housing across our region. And so our strategy, I would say, is looking even more broadly than some of the solutions at the state level.
Director Rex, Executive Director Rex, and I'll come back to you, Director Kondo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. And Sheila she knocked that out of the park. I mean, I think, the thing I think is to remember is that, we're not doing this certainly in a vacuum. There's so much work being done in the housing space right now that, we're trying to stay connected as much as we can with that. Like, for example, Dole has been working with McKinsey and Company and the Build Strong Foundation. They established this public-private consortium, housing consortium, and we've been engaged a little bit with them, have great conversations with folks that are staffing that, and it's really provided an opportunity for us to introduce ourselves to new stakeholders and everything. That's been going really well. I'll also tell you, just myself, I've been working with the executive directors at CML and CCI and Metro Mayor's Caucus, Colorado Concern, which really started as a kind of an informal conversation about housing. But we developed this little brief that I will share with you at the January 21st meeting. That basically it really is, we're trying to be more proactive, and we're reaching out to gubernatorial candidates to make sure they understand the work that we all are doing in this space, and just hoping to engage in conversation with them as we go forth. So that's more of an FYI that I'll be providing that in the packet for the January 21st meeting. Thank you.
Great. Director Kondo?
Yeah, I'm really encouraged that we are, how should you say this, when you're doing a change agent, you're trying to bring everybody along, and it's at multiple levels. So thank you for that reassurance. I think that it's, when you're trying to drive systemic change, it really is about making sure you're reaching all the stakeholders and getting everybody aligned. And I'm stating the obvious. So
thank you, Director Kondo. Director Sterling.
Hi, yeah, I can share a couple of things that we're doing in some of the mountain communities. I'm Mayor Pro Tem of Netherlands and also work with some of our surrounding communities. One of the things that's been really helpful is just being able to identify what we're calling ADUs in plain sight, detached ADUs. Going back to Director Spears' comments of what are all the strategies that you can kind of employ for senior housing and more of that middle income. And some of the things that I've been learning across the nation from strong towns is that there's some of these policy changes of being able to subdivide plots. And if you're allowed to, especially up here in our mountain communities, property taxes are oftentimes driving these folks out of our communities because it becomes so expensive. But if you're able to allow them to subdivide their plot, now it's a reduction on property taxes, and it's also the ability for them to potentially sell that second lot off and also capture financing as you would a new build, which is one of the barriers of being able to build ADUs in general. But it's this prototyping of policy that we're finding is really kind of neat. So, being able to see what's available from a detached ADU, but then what happens if you change X, Y, or Z from a policy simulation standpoint. And so those are some of the things that we're kind of doing and that we're looking out for in terms of just, that detached ADU as one of those tactics to drive some of that gentle infill, aging seniors, workforce housing, those types of things. So just want to share that.
Thank you very much, Director Sterling. Any other questions or comments? Getting a lot of thumbs up on my screen. I don't know. but it was a great presentation. We thank you so much. All right, we're going to move on to our next item on the agenda is item number
Mr.
10.
Chairman?
Oh, go ahead.
Director Daigle has her hand up.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Go ahead, Director Daigle.
Thank you. I was just wondering, speaking about, bringing along all the stakeholders, and maybe I missed having like the VA as a stakeholder. Are they, is there anyone that might, I don't even know who you would reach out to get the VA involved, because I know that I have two sons, one that was in the Marines who ended up moving to Arkansas because he couldn't find anything here that he could qualify, even with a VA loan. And then I have a son that's in the Navy right now. So I think that would, that is definitely something we should consider, is including the VA and whoever it is that does that financing. I'm not sure who that is, but that's just my thought. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, if I can respond to that.
Sure.
Yeah, real quickly. No, Director Daigle, thank you very much for that. So we do have a relationship with the VA through our Veterans Directed program over on the AAA side. So I'll reach out. I'll have a conversation with Jayla and staff and see if there's opportunity there to reach out to the appropriate contact over there to at least get them engaged in the work that we're doing, and hopefully they might want to participate. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I'll try to pay closer attention to any hands being raised. And again, I'm not seeing any. So we'll move on to, let's see here. Item number 10. This is the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan Update, Recommended Investment Priorities. Attachment G in your packet. And we're going to hear from Alvin Badal Sanchez, Manager, Transportation Planning and Operations. Good evening, Alvin.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I will be discussing the Regional Transportation Plan as noted. It is included in the informational briefing section of this agenda. I do want to emphasize that piece. While there is an attachment in the meeting packet that is the list of recommended projects as it currently sits, we are not seeking any action today. It's just about sharing information about the process that has brought us to the list as it currently stands. And so I'll be doing a quick presentation to run through that. Do want to clarify that two of the attachments, attachment, let's make sure I get that number right, 2, is the list of candidate projects. So that is every project we received in the call for projects with various information that we gave to our technical body. And then attachment 3 is the list of recommended projects. So I'll be touching on both in the presentation, but I do want to clarify the difference between those.
Okay.
All right, Chair, can you confirm you're seeing that in presentation mode?
Hasn't? There, it popped in. Yes, I can.
Okay, is it the confirming it's the presentation, not an Excel sheet?
It is, no, it's recommended investment priorities.
Perfect. Okay, hold on then.
Okay.
No, Alvin, sorry, you had it. It was the presentation.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yep, you're good.
Thank you. Sorry for that little kerfluffle. So like I mentioned, this is the culmination, nearing the culmination of a process that we began last summer for all our call for projects, the list of recommended priorities that we're including in the regional transportation plan. This began over the summer, creating what our solicitation process would look like. We've moved through our call for projects, our evaluation phase. I'll touch on each of those at a high level. This slide has not been updated to reflect we are in January, but we did go before the TAC, our Transportation Advisory Committee, in December seeking a recommendation, and that was unanimously recommended to the RTC with some select revisions. We'll be before the RTC later this month, our Regional Transportation Committee, and then again before you as the board seeking approval of that recommended list. We received 133 candidate projects. That is that attachment 2 that I mentioned. Every project that we received through our call was evaluated by DRCOG staff. We also provided additional information where available related to congestion along those corridors in those areas, analysis using our existing equity index, and then if any of the forums or the counties ranked their projects, that was also provided in that spreadsheet. The bulk of our projects came from our county transportation forums, but one new piece this cycle was DRCOG submitting projects, and those included projects related to the regional BRT network. So offering up some additional slots for our local member governments to submit other priorities within their areas. A new piece that you haven't seen in previous presentations is a little bit of the financials that go into our regional transportation plan. So on this chart, if you add up all of the requests that we received in our call for projects, those 133 requests, we got requests for 11.4 billion to be spent in the region. Through our financial planning work, we believe that we have about 7.8 billion out to 2050 to spend on transportation projects. So our process to evaluate those, whittle those down, was to get within our fiscal constraint requirements that are part of our metropolitan transportation planning process. Beyond the scores that we provided, we also reached out to our regional partners through check-ins, as well as having meetings with our regional review panel. The partner check-ins included planning staff from CDOT Regions 1 and Regions 4, DRCOG, and then RTD. And then our regional review panel meetings included representatives from each of our 10 counties across the Denver region. Starting with the regional review panel, the goal behind this group was representing forum perspectives. We recognize all of our member governments are situated a little differently across our 10 county area, so bringing their own priorities, visions, and needs into those conversations. A few of our forum partners did leverage our own criteria to figure out their own projects to submit in the call for projects. So we wanted to hear if there were any priorities potentially missing. What did they learn through their own use of our criteria as they were figuring out the project to submit in the call? They provided additional feedback just on larger aspects of the plan. What should we be considering as we start to write the plan, talk about the priorities that we're including and the investments that we're going to be making. We ended up meeting 3 times in the fall before Thanksgiving. The first meeting was focused on those higher level points for the plan process, but meetings 2 and 3 did focus on reviewing draft recommendations as they stood at that time. The regional partner check-ins included the planning staff from CDOT, DRCOG, and RTD. The goal behind these, we were meeting weekly between late October and early December, was reviewing all of those candidate projects, talking about them at the regional level. What are those regional priorities? Specifically, we also wanted to hear on how any of those submittals might impact CDOT's or RTD's facilities or services that they are also offering. If there was a project on a state highway, was CDOT aware of it? Were there any changes that might need to be made to the scope? Do we need to work between the partners to see what we're including in the RTP if that makes it forward? The partners did workshop and draft those recommendations. So what staging period made sense to include that project, and what should the scope be to reflect in the RTP? What's the cost reasonably to assume for a project of that scope? And then we also wanted to make sure we were aligning where possible the different planning priorities that are ongoing in the region. We're all aware of the 10-year planning process that's occurring. We want to make sure that both plans are speaking the same language, at least for the first 10 years, making sure there are no surprises in our plan or CDOT's 10-year plan once they both come up for action. I've touched on the financial planning piece in previous presentations, but we're finally at a place where we could talk about the different breakdown of that funding across the region. I am only focusing on the regional partners in this slide. Part of our financial planning work does also look at our public highway authorities, revenues being spent by our local member governments on their systems as well. But this is just the 3 regional partners, as you've heard us call them, CDOT, DRCOG, and RTD. We rely on RTD's financial planning forecast to identify what revenues available to them through the life of the plan, and then program distribution that's developed through CDOT that's at a statewide level, but also broken down at the MPO and regional level. And so those are how we identify what funds are available to CDOT and DRCOG. When we talk about DRCOG administered funds, think of the funds that we administer through our TIP process. So the different acronyms you often hear us talk about during the TIP policy discussions or that come through during TIP amendments. And so of the three regional partners, RTD has the most revenue available for the transportation system to be spent across the region, and then CDOT and DRCOG make up that final third. A piece that you hear us talk about, though, is that projects versus programs distinction. Just because there might be X amount of money being spent on the transportation system or available to be spent on the transportation system out to 2050 doesn't mean it's not already called for. So we make a distinction between projects and programs. The red slice on each of these charts is what we believe is available for the individually listed projects that are on attachment 3. And so there'll be those lines and dots on our maps that we're showing in the regional transportation plan. Programs are those projects that are maybe smaller scale or go through their own process. We know they're going to occur over the next 25 to 30 years, but we're just not sure what those projects are right now. An example on the CDOT side is their ongoing call for their HSIP, Highway Safety Improvement Program projects. We know they're going to spend that money out to 2050. We know projects are going to occur in our region out to 2050. We're just not sure what those are yet, so we're not going to attempt to list what that might be, but we know that money is going to be spent in the region on transportation improving safety. As DRCOG has the most leeway through our process for projects versus programs, you do see in that middle chart that over 3/4 of the revenue that we expect to be available to DRCOG, we're making available to projects that are individually listed in the RTP. And then for RTD, major focus on maintaining, enhancing the existing system. Attachment 3 does include some select projects pulled from that reflect ongoing priorities that are related to maintenance, bus maintenance facility, level boarding, and then Northwest Rail. If you look at the breakdown of funding, so this is not the number of projects in the RTP, but how the funding revenue amount is broken out. If you'll recall, we committed to carrying over a certain number of projects through our planning process. These are projects already in construction in the environmental phase where they have funding for those phases. Of the $7.8 billion that we expected to be available, a third is already called for by projects that we committed to carrying forward. Of that amount, we first updated those projects related to scope, cost, staging period. Over half of the other funding is going to resubmitted projects under the current framework. And so these are projects that are already in the regional transportation plan. They did have to be reapplied for if local governments wanted them to stay in the plan. So we prioritized those as we were looking at the project list. If it's a priority now, you've reapplied for it, it's still a priority for you, let's keep it in the plan. And then 14% of revenue in the new plan will be for new projects. So these are projects that do not currently exist in the RTP. They are not listed right now in the RTP, but we're proposing that amount go towards new projects in the plan. Next steps, like I mentioned, will be before the Regional Transportation Committee later in January, seeking a recommendation to continue that action moving forward. And then again, before you in January, seeking approval of that project list. There have been some select revisions since the packet went out in December. Was designed in December. And so those will be reflected in a revised list that goes before the meeting packets for RTC and the board. And then, as you've heard me say often as well, we'll then pivot to modeling to make sure we're showing compliance for our federal air quality requirements and our state GHG emission reduction requirements. I know that was high level. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you to see if there are any questions related to this item.
Questions for Alvin? Director Levy.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Alvin, for the presentation. Going back to the public comment that we received at the beginning of the meeting on projects that scored very well but are not slated for funding until out years. What is the opportunity to look at some of those issues and see whether some of that ranking or slotting in for funding could be adjusted?
Yep. So one point to clarify through our own planning process, we don't have a term that's similar to CDOT's out years. When it comes to our regional transportation planning process, any project in the RTP is what we consider fiscally constrained, so a priority of the region. There isn't a particular there isn't more funding in the early years than there are in the later years in terms of commitment. So from our perspective, any project in the plan is a priority. And through our TIP process is available through TIP funding. It might just depend on what phase of development is available through those call for projects. We have, through our process, in terms of identifying investments, tried to include projects that we call non-regionally significant. So those are often active transportation, safety, freight projects that don't have to be in the plan. And we are including those where appropriate programmatically in the RTP to show some of those other multimodal investments that are occurring. Part of how projects have also slotted in the plan, beyond just the scores and the ranking that might have been provided, is talking through project development and appropriateness with our regional partners and local partners. So it's a balance between where is the project now potentially in phasing? Is it appropriate to include in a particular year over another? So scores are only one piece that go into how we end up selecting projects for particular staging periods.
So if I'm understanding correctly, then just looking at that list of projects that were submitted, where there's just the first one that I have here, maybe estimated year of completion 2035 to 2039. Is that based on the submittal that was saying that's when the project will be ready? That's when they think the funding could be put together on that?
Yes, so in that attachment, any of the estimated years of completions were provided by the applicant. So that's what local member government, CDOT, or RTD were telling us is feasible to include in the RTP. Some do move, so you might not see that project in that same staging period in attachment 3. That's where those conversations between the partners come into play. Do we bundle it with another project, push it back? Do we bundle it with another project, pull it forward? Do we change the scope to have something occur earlier? That was provided by applicants, though.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Other questions? I'm not seeing any hands. Miss Stevens, do you see any hands? There we go.
I don't either, Mr. Chair.
Okay, just wanted to verify. When it's in presentation mode, sometimes I miss the hands. So, all right, thank you very much. We're going to move on to informational items. Just call your attention to items number 11, 12, and 13. And I'd ask for you to review those. And if you have any questions, get back in touch with either Executive Director Rex, Rich Morrow, or Josh Schwenk with your questions. If there are no other comments or questions about that particular, the informational items, I think we'll move on. I'm not seeing any hands raised. So we'll talk about next meeting is going to be January 21st, 2026. And is that all virtual as well, Doug?
The next meeting of the board?
Yeah, or that's in person, correct?
Yes.
That'll be
January
in
21st
person.
meeting will be in person, yes.
Okay, great. Are there any comments or questions? I did want to just say welcome to Charles Dukes from the City of Commerce City. And I heard that you just learned you're going to be the member on DRCOG. Welcome to the team.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to serving and being on here with a number of familiar faces and learning some new ones. Thanks.
Excellent. All right. If there's no other comments or questions, Executive Director Rex.
Yes, thank you, sir, very much. I just wanted to let the Finance and Budget Committee members know that we will start our meeting promptly at 5:30 for a hopefully short but important meeting. So thank you.
Excellent. We appreciate that. There being no further business, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.